Dealing with rejection. Getting rejected is pretty much par for the course for the majority of aspiring musicians. If you're actively pitching your tracks to people in the industry, chances are you're going to be rejected multiple times on your path to success. The reason for this rejection is varied. Sometimes people pass on your music because it's simply not good enough. It's not ready yet. Other times people will pass on your material because it's simply not what they need or doesn't fill a gap in their catalog. One of the great things about running my website and working with so many different people in the music business is that I have a network of people I can turn to who will, at the very least, listen to my music and give me their honest, uncensored feedback. This is extremely valuable because oftentimes when people pass on your music, you don't even know why. Is it the song, the production, the vocals? If there's no feedback, it's hard to know for sure. When you don't get feedback when someone passes on your music, all you can really do is speculate as to why they passed. When you get honest feedback, you can use that to improve your music going forward. The majority of time, if you're pitching music and someone isn't interested, you probably won't get much feedback as to why. Oftentimes, you won't even get a response. But when you do hear back from someone who isn't interested, try to find out why. Ask them what it is about your music they felt wasn't up to speed. Oftentimes, there are subtle things that could be off about your track that prevent it from working in the context of licensing. It could be that your lyrics don't quite work for TV shows, or it could be the vocal isn't quite strong enough. There's a lot of potentially minor things that could cause someone to pass on your material. Try to gather as much feedback about your tracks as you can when you start pitching your songs. This is very valuable information that will help you get a really good sense for what areas of your music need work. You're never going to write music that everyone loves because not everyone hears music the same way. You can submit the same song to 10 different places and get 10 different responses. However, if you make enough submissions and gather enough feedback, you start to get a pretty clear idea of how your music stacks up against the competition and how people in the industry perceive what it is you do. Not everyone is going to like everything you do. However, if you're trying to license your music, your job as a songwriter is really to write music that will move and inspire the people you pitch it to. Your job, in a sense, is to know the industry well enough to know the kinds of songs that will interest those that you're pitching to, and then write those songs. To put it another way, if the majority of people you pitch your music to are passing on your material, you're probably off track, at least with regards to your goal of getting your music licensed. Maybe you've written a great song, but it just doesn't work for licensing. Great. You have a great song you can do something else with. But if you're trying to license your material, you need to figure out why certain songs work and why others don't. This is your job. It's not really the job of other people in the industry to teach you. Some people in the industry are gracious enough to offer their feedback and will point you in the right direction. But for better or worse, this is ultimately up to you to figure out. Of course, this course will give you a lot of insight into what types of songs work for licensing and what types of songs don't work. But the point is, most people working in the industry don't really have time to hold your hand and teach you this because they're too busy with everything else they have going on. This is why so many places don't even respond when they pass on your material. They're not necessarily being rude. They probably just don't have the time to teach you how to do your job. Think of it this way. It would be sort of like a guitar retailer teaching a guitar manufacturer how to make guitars. This obviously isn't the way it works. Your job as a songwriter is to study and know the market you're working in the same way that a guitar manufacturer needs to know how to make guitars that people want to buy. One of the hardest things to do as songwriters and musicians is to be truly objective about our own material. When you write and record a song, there's a sense of excitement about the process that can cloud your judgment. It's exciting to see your songs come to life. So exciting, in fact, that it's all too easy to rush to judgment prematurely about how great or on target your material truly is. It's a good idea to wait a few days after you finish a song and go back to it with fresh ears. Listen to it again and compare it to a few other tracks that have done well licensing-wise in a similar genre. Does it truly stand up? Does your track have the same punch, clarity, catchiness, and so on? These are all really important questions to ask when you're writing and producing material. Don't get lost in the excitement of the creative process so much that you lose sight of whether or not what you're creating is ultimately commercially viable. There's a subjective quality to music that is unavoidable. Some people like songs that others don't. But when it comes to licensing, there's a lot of elements that aren't really subjective at all. They're actually quite easy to quantify and evaluate. Things like production quality, vocal performance, lyrics, and so on are all very easy to measure and gather a consensus on. If you compare a really well-produced song to a not so well-produced song, it's very easy to hear. The same can be said for a great vocal performance versus a subpar vocal performance. There's nothing really subjective about these things at all. If you submit the same song to enough places, there's usually a sort of consensus among the people you're pitching to that you are either on track or off. So to sum up this section, rejection is a part of the process. Don't get overly discouraged by it. I still get rejected by places all the time for a variety of reasons. But I know the market well enough to write songs that get consistently picked up and licensed by a good percentage of the places I pitch to. Try to get as much feedback as possible when you do get rejected about why people are passing on your music, and use that along with your ongoing study and research of the industry to improve your tracks going forward. Music licensing is, in a lot of ways, a numbers game. Your job isn't necessarily to bat 100%. It's just to keep improving your material to the point that you're consistently licensing your songs.